Millionaire's shocking bet. Fix my engine and unlock my entire salary in an unexpected twist. Jake wiped the sweat from his brow as he slammed the garage door shut, suddenly engulfed by a cloud of uncertainty. He stood at the edge of his family's garage, the scent of rust and gasoline heavy in the air. The old cars lining the street had seen better days, and so had his life. Then, in a moment that felt surreal, a black luxury car rolled into his sanctuary, its polished surface gleaming like a beacon of wealth in the sun. Out stepped Thomas, a businessman adorned in designer suits that whispered of millions, his livelihood miles apart from Jake's. "Can you fix it?" Thomas asked, gesturing toward the vintage car that lay sputtering, an enigma of metal and despair. "I'll give you a year's salary if you succeed, a chance to change your life." The words echoed in Jake's mind, conflicting ambitions battling for dominance. He thought of his mother's weary eyes, his sister's spirited laughter, the pressure mounting to rescue them from a life of scraping by, mixed with the specter of wellness. Yet, lurking beneath the surface, a sense of unease clawed at him. Thomas was the embodiment of everything Jake's father had distrusted. As the initial shock of the bet faded, his determination grew. He dove headfirst into the challenge, yet anxiety loomed larger with every moment. Could he really unlock an engine that had bested seasoned mechanics? Time slipped away as he twisted and turned, pulses of panic laced with tenacity. Behind every bolt he turned, Jake grappled with the burden of expectations, both from himself and the memory of his father, a man who believed in the sanctity of hard work, a whisper of pride guiding him through the chaos. But then a truth jabbed violently against his resolve. Thomas had ties to his father's past, a betrayal that could break him apart, leaving him spiraling in a whirlwind of doubt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The stakes were impossibly high. Could success mean selling out to a silver-plated version of failure? Internal conflict crashed within him, and Jake's fingers trembled as he worked. With every passing day, he felt the weight of desperation pressing against him, making it hard to breathe. The roaring engine was more than a machine. It was a reflection of his ambition and the risks it demanded. As he unearthed ghostly memories of his father's lessons, questions hung in the air with profound intensity. Was wealth and recognition truly the measures of success? Or would it wrap Jake in a cloak of false pride, suffocating the values he held dear? The echoes of loyalty battled against the seductive pull of ambition, till the last rivet ground against his heart like a dull ache. Just as he thought he could see the path ahead, the final verdict of their wager loomed, threatening to snap the fragile tether he had to his father's principles. Jake held his breath, standing at the crossroads of his own making, fingers still greasy with oil and emotions running wild. Would he advance toward the bright lights of opportunity, or would he risk it all for a legacy that whispered still through the rusting husks crowding his childhood? The dawn of understanding waited, yet within it lurked the specter of uncertainty, an outcome that could well dictate not just his fate, but that of his family forever. The morning sun poured into the garage, illuminating the collection of tools Jake had painstakingly organized, their reflective surfaces taunting him with the discipline he craved but struggled to maintain. He stood over the sputtering engine, the machine now standing as a heavy anchor weighing down his thoughts. Each day of repairs revealed new complexities. Replaced parts, stubborn bolts, and hidden leaks that seemed to symbolize the layers of his own life. He felt entangled in a web spun of his father's lessons and the ambitions Thomas represented. Jake dropped his wrench and stepped back, chest rising and falling in rapid succession. Doubt gnawed at his resolve. Could he truly take this leap? He thought about the money. The year's salary dangled like a carrot, enticing yet elusive. His mind raced through what those funds could mean for his family, the late bills, the furnace on the verge of collapse, and his sister's plans for college. But with each thought of financial freedom came a surge of anxiety, the pressure turning his stomach into knots. He needed to refocus, to find determination amidst the chaos. That evening, as darkness fell outside the garage, Jake decided to revisit the past. He combed through the collection of old photos and trinkets that adorned the shelves. A tattered picture of his father, grinning with pride beside his first car, ignited a fire within him. Hard work pays off, his father's voice echoed in his mind as he recalled the countless lessons in mechanics and integrity. Determination flooded back as he cleared the clutter from his workspace, feeling the weight of expectations dissipate. He made a firm decision: it wasn't just about fixing the engine or proving something to Thomas. It was about proving to himself that he could rise above the doubts that had held him back for years. Slowly but surely, he formulated a plan, studying old manuals, consulting online forums, and reaching out to mentors who understood the intricacies of auto mechanics more than he did. Days turned into weeks, Jake immersing himself in the challenge as both a personal endeavor and a means of growth. He became more than a mechanic. He evolved into a problem solver, embracing every new flaw discovered in the engine as an opportunity to learn. Each breakthrough rekindled the ambition he thought he lost. Tools became an extension of himself, and he started to relish the intricate dance between failure and success. But lurking beneath his newfound confidence was an unavoidable confrontation. Each interaction with Thomas during the progress check-ins felt charged with underlying tension. Jake's loyalty to his father's memory clashed with the lure of opportunity represented by the businessman. He'd chosen to tackle this project not just for the money, but as a testament to his growth and resilience, a bridge to his future, or a trap of moral compromise. The weight of this internal conflict grew heavier with every passing day. During a particularly grueling evening of work, as Jake meticulously recalibrated the distributor cap, a revelation struck him like lightning. He understood now that integrity could coexist with ambition. It was possible to strive for greatness without losing the values instilled in him over years of hard work. But could he uphold that belief in the face of Thomas's world, one that thrived on power, profit, and self-interest? As dawn broke, illuminating the garage once more, Jake felt a shift within. He was closer to a breakthrough, not only with the engine but within himself. Yet deep inside was the burgeoning awareness that a moment would come, challenging everything he had come to believe. The real question loomed larger than an engine repair. What would he sacrifice to take control of his destiny, and who would stand in his way? Determined yet uncertain, Jake tightened his grip on the wrench, knowing one thing: he was ready for whatever came next. The stakes had never been higher. It was now a race not just against time but against the very essence of who he was meant to become. What discoveries lay hidden in the depths of the engine, and what would they ultimately reveal about him? The air felt thick with tension as Jake leaned over the engine, his hands doing the work even as his mind spiraled into deeper reflection. The sun had dipped below the horizon, but a soft amber glow radiated from the overhead fluorescent lights, casting long shadows across his workspace. Each clink of the wrench against metal echoed in the silence, a rhythmic reminder of the decision that would soon dictate his future. That day, while fine-tuning the wiring, a realization ignited in his mind: every part of this machine had been engineered to work in harmony. Just like the components he understood, he too needed to align his ambitions with his principles. But how? The juxtaposition of his father's steadfast integrity and Thomas's opportunistic nature weighed heavily on him. It was just before midnight when the sharp ping of his phone shattered the silence, a notification from Thomas that sent a ripple of unease through him. Their conversations had shifted, inching closer to the point of contention. Let us discuss the next steps. Read the text, accompanied by an almost insistent suggestion of a meetup. Jake's pulse quickened. It was time to face the reality of his choices. He hesitated, the wrench slipping from his fingers, clattering against the floor. Jake thought about how Thomas's persuasive charm often masked his true intentions. Every encounter felt like a negotiation with a master salesman, tempting him to see only the surface prosperity without the undercurrents of compromise. Uncertainty swelled in his chest, a mixture of resolve and fear battling for dominance. Drawing a deep breath, he picked up the phone. It was now or never. "Okay, let us meet," he typed out, his heart pounding with each keystroke. The response was almost instantaneous. "Perfect. Tomorrow at noon. I have a proposition." The hour before sleep was restless, twisting thoughts spiraling down a dark and uncertain path. Striving for success had mentally fatigued him, unraveling every assumption he had about himself and the world around him. There was no escaping the question lingering at the forefront of his mind. Would he be willing to overlook his values for the sake of financial gain? He ran through potential scenarios like a car crossing a winding road. Will one wrong turn derail his progress? Morning arrived with renewed intensity. Jake's hands were steady, but his mind oscillated between clarity and self-doubt. He threw himself into the routine of preparing for the meeting, yet it proved insufficient in masking the tornado of emotions swirling inside him. Anticipation clashed with apprehension. He knew the conversation with Thomas would bring him closer to a precipice, the first step toward understanding just how much he was willing to fight for his beliefs. When the clock struck noon, he found himself outside a sleek cafe, the polished facade of the glass structure mirroring his own conflicted state of mind. He entered, the hum of voices creating a cacophony that could drown out his misgivings. He spotted Thomas already seated, an expression of practiced confidence etched across his face. The businessman exuded an aura that commanded attention, yet underneath the surface, Jake sensed the cold pragmatism that often defined people in power. "Jake, glad you could make it," Thomas greeted, his smile disarming yet calculated. Jake settled into the chair opposite him, an ocean of inscrutability undisclosed between them. "What's this proposition you wanted to discuss?" he asked cautiously, driven by a need to uncover the truth hidden beneath layers of charm. Thomas leaned in, his tone dropping slightly. "Let's cut to the chase. I want to discuss your skills, your work ethic. There's an opportunity here that could benefit you immensely, but it comes with challenges." Was this the moment he had anticipated, the ultimatum hanging in the air? Jake felt that familiar sensation of being cornered, as though all his fears and aspirations coalesced into this pivotal instant. But the path ahead remained unclear, shrouded in the deeper implications of the choices he was about to face. Could he navigate this negotiation without losing himself? In that fleeting moment, a realization emerged: he would have to confront not just Thomas, but also the shadows of expectation and compromise within his own psyche. Somehow, amidst the commotion of prospects and compromises, he had to forge his own path, catalyzing the transformation he desperately sought. With gathering resolve, he locked eyes with Thomas. The stakes were elevated. The future he dreamed of lay perilously close yet unnervingly out of reach. "Let's hear it then," he stated, feelings of defiance igniting within him, aware that the conversation would test the very core of his beliefs. The moment had arrived to confront not just Thomas's proposition, but the challenge of an entire life defined by choices quietly bubbling beneath the surface. As the businessman prepared to speak, Jake wondered how much of himself he was willing to gamble on this high-stakes game. What awaited him on the other side of the revelation? Thomas straightened, his body language shifting as he prepared to dive deeper into the conversation. "I have the means to escalate your career. Think of it as a partnership. I want you to oversee a project that involves significant financial backing, but it isn't without its risks." Jake could feel the weight of those words settle heavily in the air between them. The prospect of rapid career advancement tugged at his ambitions, but the thrill of potential gain was ensnared by the vines of doubt winding through his mind. "Risks?" Jake's voice came out firmer than he felt, an instinctive counter to the unease brewing within him. He needed clarity to navigate this potentially perilous path. "What does that entail?" "The auto industry is shifting. Innovation is key, and while many still cling to old models, I'm focused on the future: electric vehicles, smarter tech, higher efficiency. You'd be instrumental in leading the design phase," Thomas explained, his tone balancing excitement with an undercurrent of urgency. Jake felt his pulse quicken. Here was opportunity, the very spark he had longed for. But with it came the scent of compromise. "And the challenges?" he pressed, unwilling to allow his ambitions to cloud his judgment. Thomas's smile widened, revealing the shark lurking beneath the surface. "The investors want something avant-garde, but they also expect results fast. Corner cutting will be inevitable, and ethical lines may blur in the process." He paused, gauging Jake's response. "You'd have to be prepared to embrace ambiguity, to make tough calls." Each word reverberated in Jake's mind. Could he merge his ethics with this bold venture? Or would he find himself lost in the labyrinth of greed and ambition? The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of a decision that could redefine his whole life. "I need time to consider," Jake replied, swallowing hard against the churning emotions knotting his stomach. Who was he really? The honorable man his father raised? or a pragmatic player in a dog-eat-dog world? Thomas nodded, almost imperceptibly, an avalanche of confidence cascading through him. Of course. But remember, opportunities like this don't last long. The window of possibility is closing. Jake leaned back, his chair creaking beneath him, half anticipating the crashing wave of anxiety that threatened to engulf him. What's the timeline? 6 weeks. You'll present a prototype to the investors by then. If you want in, that's your deadline. As the implications washed over him, a question crystallized. Would he uphold his principles or gamble with them? The cafe around them pulsed with life, yet to Jake, all noise faded into a dull hum, the chatter and clinking of cups a mere backdrop to the storm of confusion and tension brewing within him. Jake needed clarity. The emotional chaos tangled with the ambition pulsing through him required decisive action, consideration of what success really meant to him. He had to sift through the noise and discern what mattered most: financial reward, the thrill of innovation, or the integrity of his choices. I'll give you an answer, he said, his voice steadying as he met Thomas's gaze with newfound resolve. But I need to think this through. I'll weigh both my ambition and my conscience carefully. Thomas's eyes flickered with approval, a small victory for him, despite Jake's hesitation. Fair enough. I'll give you the weekend, he replied, though the smirk lingered. As Jake stood to leave, the gravity of the hour pressed on him. Each step out of that cafe felt monumental, an unsteady walk down an unmarked path. He passed his reflection in the glass door and barely recognized the man looking back, a mixture of trepidation and potential. Would those 6 weeks lead to growth, or would they unravel him? The stakes loomed large, and questions of identity clawed at his instincts. As he stepped onto the pavement, Jake knew he had to confront more than just Thomas's tempting offer. He had to confront himself and the deeper fears that came with ambition. The weekend ahead would be a crucible boiling down to the essence of who he truly wanted to become. What truths waited to be excavated within him? A looming question whispered in the back of his mind about the choices ahead. Would he stand firm in his values or trade them for fleeting success? Determined to find clarity, Jake knew one thing for sure: this weekend would irrevocably shape his future. But the truth that awaited him might be far more unsettling than he anticipated. Jake woke up the following morning to the sharp chirping of birds outside his window, an unwelcome intrusion that pulled him from a night of fragmented dreams filled with shifting images of auto models and callous investors. He blinked at the sun streaming in, a harsh reminder of the weight hanging over his head. The proposal from Thomas loomed larger than any of the responsibilities filling his daily life. As he brewed his morning coffee, Jake's mind reeled with every detail of the conversation. Ambition clawed at him like a beast hungry for freedom, yet integrity kept it caged. The coffee pot gurgled rhythmically, but the familiar sounds felt distant, vanishing memories of simpler days before his career teetered on a precipice. Jake poured his coffee and settled at the kitchen table, opening his laptop to search for articles on the latest trends in electric vehicles. He waded through the information, looking for inspiration, but it soon felt overwhelming. Reports of companies triumphing through innovation clashed against tales of those who crumbled under the pressure to deliver too quickly. A familiar knot tightened in his stomach. The phone rang, snapping him from his frenzy. It was Tyler, his college friend turned mechanical engineer, who had always had a penchant for tackling challenges head-on. Jake hesitated but picked up the call. Hey man, I heard you're edging closer to a big opportunity. How's it going? Tyler's voice dripped with excitement, his own passion for engineering igniting instant envy in Jake. It's complicated, Jake replied, his tone low. He recounted a condensed version of his predicament, stripping it of excessive detail and focusing on the ethical dilemma. Wow, Tyler said, his enthusiasm faltering slightly. Sounds like you're in a tough spot. You want to impress these investors and push the boundaries, but at what cost? I've never been one to compromise my values, but this, what if it's a defining moment for my career? Jake felt the surge of uncertainty clouding his judgment, his voice carrying the weight of indecision. Maybe it's time to redefine what success means to you, Tyler suggested. It doesn't have to be about just the money or the prestige. Think about the impact your work could have. You have a chance to pioneer designs that could reshape the industry. The words struck a chord within him, resonating with a truth he had overlooked in his rush to prepare for the future. He realized, as he sipped his coffee, how the question of his values had become entangled with his definition of success. "Thanks, man. I needed that perspective," Jake said, feeling a flicker of clarity ignite deep within. After the call, he let his mind wander over his past projects, the thrill of seeing them come to life, the joy of creating solutions that mattered. If he focused on innovation, he could carve a niche that complemented his principles instead of compromising them. With newfound determination, Jake began to formulate a plan, sketching out ideas and concepts that aligned with a vision of ethical advancement in the automotive industry. He stared at a blank page, his thoughts racing alongside the electric impulses of inspiration. Time became fluid as he lost himself in ideation, drafting designs infused with sustainable materials and ethical production lines. Every stroke of his pen reaffirmed his ambition, but this time it wasn't he blinded by greed. He would find investors who valued innovation, not just profit margins. The realization settled in his chest like a quiet echo of purpose. He had the power to define this path on his own terms. But in the back of his mind, Thomas's words lingered like an ominous reminder. What if the reality of that decision meant stepping into an entrenched system built on compromise? As night fell, Jake pulled away from the table, his sketches scattered around him like fallen leaves. A nagging anxiety twisted in his gut. He had addressed his personal resolve, but that confrontation with Thomas was yet to come. The clock ticked ominously. With just a few days left, uncertainty brewed. Within him, could he truly bridge his vision with the investor's expectations? Would he be able to remain steadfast against the heavy tide of ambition's seductive pull? The time had come to face the man who offered him a lifeline drenched in ambiguity. Jake knew that decision day was just around the corner, and he would either stand firmly for his values or risk losing sight of who he wanted to be. The stakes were higher than his career, they were about his soul. What revelations awaited him in the face of temptation? The thought sparked a nervous anticipation as he braced for the inevitable meeting with Thomas, ready to confront not just the offer, but his own beliefs and values. Jake awoke the next day, the looming weight of uncertainty still pressing on his chest, but a flicker of determination sparked within him. He turned over in bed, the shadows of early morning cutting through the window, fighting against the fog of hesitation that clouded his thoughts. Today was different. Today he would confront not only Thomas but also the core of who he was as a professional, a man at the crossroads of ambition and integrity. Breakfast felt trivial. He barely tasted his toast, his mind racing ahead to the encounter he had rehearsed 100 times over. As he prepared for the day, each movement felt deliberate, as though he was assembling the armor for his upcoming mental battle. He outfitted himself in a crisp shirt, each button a protective layer against the vulnerability that enveloped him. Driving to work, the hum of the engine beneath him drowned out the nagging doubts that bubbled to the surface. The streets blurred past, echoing the frenetic clash in his mind between ambition and ethics. He needed to keep this at the forefront. He wasn't just taking a meeting, he was shaping his own future. The reflections in the rearview mirrored his internal struggle, highlighting each decision that led him to this pivotal moment. In the conference room, the atmosphere felt electric with potential. Jake squared his shoulders, attempting to channel the resolve he'd cultivated in the days prior. He'd spent countless hours putting together a presentation that not only showcased innovative designs, but also addressed the ethical implications of resource extraction and sustainable manufacturing. He hoped to illustrate how these could tie into a compelling business model, one that could lure investors seeking both profit and purpose. As he entered, the air thickened as Thomas looked up, a predatory gleam in his eye. "Jake, glad you could join me," he said, his smile slick yet calculating. The tension churned in Jake's stomach as he took a seat across the polished table, bracing himself for the discourse that would inevitably unfold. They began with small talk, but Jake sensed the undercurrents of expectation. "I trust you've had enough time to mull over our conversation," Thomas said, leaning back, his body language exuding authority. "We need someone who can deliver results, and those results," he paused, allowing the weight of his words to linger, "come at a cost." Jake leaned forward, clearing his throat. "I have some ideas I'd like to share," he said, feeling the tremor of his voice but unwilling to undermine his resolve. As he shared his vision, a rush of confidence washed over him. For the first time he articulated not just hopes, but a coherent plan based on his values, designs that broke the mold and honored both consumer demand and planetary needs. But Thomas's interest was perfunctory at best. Great concepts, but let us talk numbers. What can you guarantee me? The tone was transactional, devoid of any recognition of the bigger picture Jake was trying to present in that moment. Doubt seeped back in. Could he convince Thomas? Was there room for ethical innovation in a world driven solely by profit margins? The stakes shifted, creating discomfort that tightened around his throat like a noose. Jake, Thomas interrupted his spiraling thoughts. These designs are good, but what I need is a track record of success, a proven formula. Are you willing to compromise your vision for a guaranteed return? Jake's heartbeat raced. This was the moment. Could he bend or would he break? Tyler's words echoed in his mind about redefining success, and a desperate resolve surged as he thought of how he'd come this far. Compromise could lead him down a path of regret, a path that risked transforming him into another cog in the machine. Thomas, I believe there is a way forward that marries both our ambitions and my principles. His voice now steady, he felt the tension in the room shift, if only slightly. Jake presented the alternative framework he envisioned, one that included innovative metrics for success, steering the conversation toward sustainable investments that could yield long-term benefits. But Thomas's expression darkened, his mask of charm slipping just enough for Jake to see the frustration underlying his facade. Jake, do you want to make money? Or do you want to play the idealist? The question hung heavy between them, challenging his foundation. The confrontation ignited a fierce resolve. Could he hold his ground? And at what cost? Jake steeled his gaze. He could either surrender to despair or claim his narrative. His choice would define him. Now more than ever, it was a pivotal battle between his integrity and ambition. Let us see if we can find some common ground, Jake replied after a beat, determination coursing through him. The tension vibrated, thick enough to slice through. Would this compromise lead him closer to a solution or deeper into an orchestrated deal that would extinguish his vision? The path remained further darkened ahead, uncertainty looming as he faced the man holding the key to both his dreams and his values. As they delved further into discussion, Jake felt the stakes rising again. What if this was more than just a negotiation? What if the answers he sought lay not only in the outcome but also within himself? Jake felt the weight of Thomas's gaze like a physical presence, a reminder of the precarious balance he was trying to maintain. As they debated, the lines drawn became clearer. Thomas represented the old guard, a man entrenched in a system that prioritized profit over moral integrity. Yet, Jake was no longer just a pawn on this board. He was beginning to recognize his power to redefine the game. With every point he made, he focused on how environmental responsibility could lead to greater brand loyalty and market differentiation, weaving passion into his facts. Imagine a product that not only meets consumer needs, but also tells a story of sustainability. We could lead the charge in an industry ripe for change. His voice grew bolder, fueled by a newfound fervor. Thomas, however, was unfazed. His white-collar armor gleamed, but Jake saw the cracks forming. A noble thought, but we operate in a world where the shareholders come first. You're asking for a leap of faith, he said, dismissively. Jake felt the walls close in. How did he convince a man so ensconced in profits that there was a greater dividend to be earned through purpose? His mind raced, considering how to shift the dialogue to focus on the long-term rewards of ethical business practices, emphasizing not only numbers, but the emerging consumer demand for authenticity in brand story. Ethical capitalism is not just a trend, it's a movement, Jake countered, channeling the urgency he felt. By aligning with these values, we can attract a burgeoning market of consumers who are willing to pay a premium for products they believe in. Thomas smirked, the expression both condescending and disarming. You really think those eco-conscious consumers will outnumber the cost-cutting shareholders? The challenge was explicit, and Jake could feel Thomas tightening the noose of expectation. The voice of doubt whispered once more, threatening to engulf his resolve. But then something shifted in Jake. He recognized he was no longer merely a participant in this conversation. He was the architect of his professional journey. He had learned too much, evolved too deeply to merely fold under pressure. The thought of capitulating to Thomas sparked a visceral discomfort, something akin to betrayal of the vision he'd so carefully constructed. The next words formed in his mind with clarity, unclouded by fear. What if we conducted another market study? It would provide empirical data to show the potential profitability of sustainable lines. Let us take a calculated risk together. I'm confident we exceed expectations. It was a bold move, one that surprised even him. Thomas's brow furrowed, and for the first time, Jake detected a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He held his ground, waiting for the response, the silence swelling up around them. Market studies can be manipulated, Thomas replied, but the defiance in his tone sounded less assured, like a veneer cracking under scrutiny. True. But this is about re-envisioning success, Jake pressed, emboldened by the possibility before him. The short-term gain won't hold water against a long-term strategy. People crave authenticity. The moment stretched taut, charged with the electric tension of confrontation as Jake recognized he was standing on a precipice, teetering between securing his career and losing himself in the process. He could feel the magnitude of the conversation ripple through him, shaking the foundations of his previous insecurities, but Thomas leaned back, crossing his arms with the weight of someone who holds all the cards. Are you prepared to walk away from this opportunity if I don't agree? 'Cause right now that's what it's looking like. Jake drew a deep breath, tasting the possibility of both risk and liberation. Perhaps walking away was the very foundation for a path that would align with his values. If it means compromising my vision, then yes, he said, the quiet strength of his assertion surprising him. The two locked eyes, each recognizing the shifting power dynamics in the room. Jake felt a pulse of clarity now resonating through him. It was no longer just about this meeting or this job, it was about reclaiming his narrative. No matter the outcome, as Thomas's lips pressed together in a thin line, Jake sensed the tides turning within himself. The decision lay before him, raw and honest. Compromise or conviction. Whatever path he chose would set the course for his professional identity moving forward. Suddenly, the conference room door swung open. A colleague popped their head in a mere interruption, but in that moment, Jake realized he was at a crossroads much larger than he'd imagined. What lay beyond this confrontation? Could he forge a new path that honored both ambition and integrity? Or would he let fear dictate his decisions? The door swung shut moments later, an echo of uncertainty lingering in the air. Jake felt Thomas's scrutiny like a spotlight, illuminating his choices and forcing him to confront the truths he had been wrestling with in silence. It was a dizzying moment where the noise of ambition clashed with the whisper of self-doubt. He felt almost suspended in time, a pendulum swinging between fear and conviction. Jake, Thomas finally broke the silence, his voice steady yet tinged with irritation. You're willing to gamble your entire future on a theory. What guarantees can you provide that this gamble will pay off? The pressure closed in, a tight band around Jake's chest that made it hard to think. Yet, as he opened his mouth to speak, a flicker of clarity ignited within him. It wasn't just about proving a point or securing his position. It was about affirming his integrity, about defining the man he wanted to be in this landscape of moral ambiguity. The data is one piece, but there's more to this than numbers. We're poised on the brink of a paradigm shift in consumer behavior. People want brands they can trust. A smile played at the corners of Thomas's mouth, a mixture of amusement and condescension. Trust, Jake? That's a fine sentiment, but sentiment won't keep the stock prices afloat. Jake took a step closer, his heart pounding. No, but innovation will. Remember the last report? The statistics are clear. Companies prioritizing ethics in their branding are not merely surviving. They're thriving. If we want to stand out, we need to carve a path that aligns with what our customers genuinely care about. Thomas's demeanor stiffened, and in his eyes, Jake detected a ripple of something that resembled unease. Perhaps, he thought, Thomas was beginning to recognize just how steeped in the old ways he had become. There was a flicker of human connection in the midst of their corporate clash, one that Jake could seize if only he could keep pushing. Consider the future, Jake pressed, desperation and passion lining his words. The next generation of consumers is more conscious than ever. This isn't about our current shareholders. It's about long-term market viability. We need to anticipate the shifts before they happen. For a moment, the silence enveloped them both, the weight of Jake's words settling into the space between them. Thomas's fingers drummed against his arm, an involuntary sign of his wrestling thoughts. But then, with an exasperated sigh, Thomas replied, "This is why I don't trust enthusiasm, Jake. It lacks the foundation of reality. The dismissal stung, sending a wave of frustration washing over Jake. Did he really think his vision was merely naive hope? Jake clenched his fists, fighting the urge to retreat into compliance. Instead, he took a breath, gathering resolve. Perhaps a counteroffensive was warranted. Thomas, if that's what you think, then maybe it's time to show you just how much clarity I've gained. Our company can go from good to great by pivoting on this sustainable strategy. But if we hold tight to outdated beliefs, we risk becoming irrelevant. Thomas's expression hardened, but Jake could see the slightest quiver of uncertainty clouding the older man's judgment. You're quite the bold idealist, he remarked, his voice dripping with disdain. Jake almost laughed, spurred by an unexpected sense of liberation. A bold idealist who's ready to rise above complacency. The time to gamble isn't. Just now it's the only way to survive this game. What I'm proposing isn't just a risk. It's an opportunity for transformational growth. The tension escalated again, pulsing in and out of the room like a heartbeat. Jake felt alive, his anxiety morphing into something potent. Ambition and tenacity battle-tested by confrontation. Was this truly what it felt like to assert himself? To declare his worth through his conviction? He had envisioned this moment for too long to back down now, even if it meant risking the familiar safety of his position. Can you put together a proposal for a sustainability study? Thomas finally asked, his tone more analytical, slipping back into corporate terms. Something that outlines our path and the data to back it up? Jake nodded, surprise mingling with determination. Absolutely. The storm clouds above may still threaten, but for the first time, the outlines of a new horizon were beginning to take shape as he left the conference room. A current of energy surged through him, a mixture of uncertainty and unyielding enthusiasm. But even as he walked away, another question loomed larger than life in his mind. Was he truly ready to challenge the status quo? And how far was he willing to go to secure his vision? The answer awaited him on the other side of the proposal, where critique mingled with possibility. What awaited him next could redefine not just his career but who he believed himself to be. The fluorescent lights buzzed relentlessly above Jake as he settled into his desk, the rhythmic tapping of keyboard keys barely breaking the mounting tension in his mind. He had anticipated the meeting with Thomas, yet it had unfolded in a way that left both exhilaration and lingering apprehension shimmering in the air. The challenge ahead seemed monumental, but with his newfound clarity came a potent drive. He opened his laptop, the familiar screen pooling with data charts and analytics. The prospect of crafting a sustainability proposal consumed his thoughts, a task he relished yet feared would unravel under scrutiny. As he sifted through the mounds of statistics, one glaring fact stood out. Companies openly embracing sustainability not only boosted their reputations but saw significant financial returns. This was no longer just an ethical imperative. It was a strategic move to safeguard the company's future. Each statistic danced tantalizingly close to his fingertips, but they weren't sufficient alone. Hours slipped by as Jake drafted and redrafted his proposal, each sentence chiseled with intention. He envisioned not just numbers, but a narrative woven through with passion for the values he hoped to represent. This wasn't just a report, it was a manifesto for change, a way to elevate the company's voice among its competitors. But self-doubt clawed at him. What if Thomas dismissed it again? What if his colleagues questioned his ambition? The critiques of bureaucracy had never been more tangible, each moment tinged with the potential for failure that crept insidiously into his mind as he pushed through the layers of fear. A thought crystallized. The real threat wasn't rebuke, it was conformity. He realized he had a choice: to allow that fear to paralyze him, or to use it as fuel for growth. Sitting in the sterile glow of the office felt like an epiphany. Perhaps this process, this struggle, was the crucible in which he would forge his future self. His resolve solidified, Jake decided to take unexpected steps. He mapped out the potential pitfalls in his proposal, anticipating the arguments that would be thrown at him, and preparing counterarguments. This was no longer just about presenting metrics, it was about telling an engaging story, drawing connections between ethical branding and consumer behavior in a compelling way. He envisioned the faces around the boardroom table, and he needed them not just to see the numbers, but to feel the urgency of the change he was advocating. As the hours rolled into the evening, Jake felt fatigue thread its way into his bones, but also exhilaration. He was equipped and armed with more than just a proposal. He had a vision that resonated with his understanding of the world and his place within it. The weight of his past doubts began to lift. He was not merely defending an idea. He was challenging a current. Just as he reached for his coffee cup, a message pinged into being on his screen. A notification of a critical team meeting scheduled for the following morning. It felt like a game show buzzer, heralding a turning point. In that instant, the excitement swelled again. Jake's heart raced as he prepared to present, the adrenaline pulsating in his veins. This was the moment he had fought for, the moment where he could battle not only for the company's future but also for his own identity. The stakes felt impossibly high, yet within that felt urgency. He found a strange comfort. With a final flourish, Jake saved his document and glanced upward at the clock. He understood the next day would bring either triumph or defeat, but the journey to get there defined him more than the outcome. The night before his presentation, a lingering question nestled like an unwelcome thought. Was he truly ready for the board's scrutiny, and would they see the value in a vision rooted in integrity? As he prepared for sleep, uncertainty coiled tightly within him. The answer awaited him when the sun rose at the crucial intersection of dream and reality. Jake stood before the sleek conference room filled with corporate brass, a mixture of anticipation and tension coiling in his chest. The moment had arrived when he would present not just a proposal, but a vision that encapsulated his values and aspirations. As he glanced around at the expectant faces, he was reminded of the weighty journey that had brought him here, the struggles, the doubts, and ultimately, the resolve he had fashioned from his father's guiding beliefs. "Thank you for gathering," Jake began, voice steady despite the butterflies fluttering within. "Today, I'm excited to propose a new strategy for our company, one that not only promises financial growth, but aligns with the ethical imperatives driving consumer choice in our evolving market." The room watched intently, Jake feeling the intensity of their scrutiny. But with each word, a flame of confidence ignited within him. He articulated the shifts in consumer behavior, emphasizing the compelling data that illustrated how sustainability could yield not just accolades but real profits. Each bullet point on his slide was infused with passion, the connection between purpose and profit, a truth he had come to recognize throughout countless hours in his garage and discussions with mentors. As he delved deeper into his proposal, something remarkable happened. He felt that familiar echo of his father's teachings guiding him beneath the surface, whispering words of wisdom that encouraged authenticity over conformity. "We stand at a unique crossroads in our industry," he pressed, gesturing toward a chart that depicted the market potential of sustainable automotive practices. "Our consumers are not just looking for products, they are investing in narratives. They want to support brands that align with their values." The silence in the room thickened, a palpable tension that underscored the gravity of his presentation. Jake delivered statistics and projections punctuated by poignant anecdotes that emanated from his journey, creating a connection between his personal evolution and the company's future. He painted a vivid picture of the innovation that could arise should the firm embrace this vision. When he finally paused to take a breath, Jake felt a shift in the air, a gradual slide from skepticism to intrigue among his colleagues. "Imagine what it would mean for our brand to lead the charge in this new era of automotive sustainability," he concluded, gazing at Thomas, who eyed him with an inscrutable expression. "This is a chance not only to elevate our company's status, but to change the conversation in our industry." Just as a ripple of murmurs began to spread through the room, Thomas spoke, his voice smooth yet edged with curiosity. "You present an appealing narrative, Jake, but what guarantees do you have that investing in sustainability over conventional wisdom will yield the results we expect?" Here it was the moment of truth. In this instant, Jake's newly forged identity crystallized. "I cannot guarantee results," he stated, unwavering, "but I can offer a commitment to innovate with integrity. Through continuous market research, consumer engagement, and an ethos of responsibility, we can create a brand that resonates for generations. We won't just react to market trends. We will establish them." With that, Jake felt the gravity of the stakes that had accompanied him for weeks begin to shift. Questions about funding, timelines, and implementation processes emerged, and he answered them with graduated ease, each response laced not only with thoughtfulness but with a newfound trust in his own expertise. As discussions rolled on, something remarkable happened. The room began to shift, and Jake realized he was no longer merely defending an idea. He was advocating for a transformation that mirrored his personal journey. Colleagues began to nod in agreement, infused with inspiration he had ignited within them. When the meeting finally adjourned, applause broke out. Jake stood there, satisfaction washing over him like waves, an exhilarating awareness of the magnitude of what he had accomplished. Thomas approached him, a glimmer of respect crossing his composed face. "You've managed to advocate for something much larger than profit, Jake. Let us continue this discussion with the board." In that moment, Jake understood he had crossed a threshold, not just securing a proposal, but reaffirming his identity. He had proven his capability to weave ambition with ethics, creating a tapestry of professional and personal resolution. As he stepped out of the conference room, the sunlight flooded over him like a promise his path was clear. Moments before, he had fears and uncertainties, yet now he felt a firm belief in himself and the principles that defined him as a young professional. He had manifested something extraordinary from the depths of doubt: achievement, purpose, and substantial recognition of his worth, qualities that were far more significant than any dollar amount. This was his legacy, a testament not only to his skills as a mechanic but to his capacity as a forward-thinking innovator. As he walked away, he felt solid confidence coursing through him, comforted by the knowledge that he could navigate his future without compromising the values he cherished most. A chapter of doubt closed and a new dawn emerged, one illuminated by clarity, resilience, and transformative growth. Now you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Each click supports inspiring content. Comment your reactions and theories about this remarkable ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. It's the moment to show your support for amazing journeys of personal overcoming.